There comes a moment in daytime television when the script falls apart, the facade cracks, and what's left is nothing but raw truth delivered with unshakable confidence. This was one of those moments, one that viewers would replay for years, one that producers would pretend never happened, and one that proved icons never fade. They simply wait for their spotlight to be respected. It all began like any other taping of The View. Cameras rolled, audience murmured, cue cards flipped, and the usual buzz filled the studio. But the instant Chaka Khan stepped onto the stage, draped in a royal shade of purple that shimmered under the lights, the atmosphere changed. The audience didn't just see a guest, they saw a legend entering her arena. Yet Joy Behar, never one to hide behind subtlety, greeted her with that trademark smirk, the one she saves for moments when she thinks she's the smartest person in the room. Little did she know she was seconds away from a reality check delivered with elegance and absolute precision. The introductions ended, applause faded, and without missing a beat, Joy leaned forward, pen poised like a weapon. "So, Chaka, you've been in the music business for, what, 50 years? That must feel like forever in pop music terms." A seemingly harmless question coated in condescension. Chaka didn't flinch. She sat tall, eyes steady eyes that had faced critics, labels, and industry titans, and never once backed down. "Actually, Joy," she replied smoothly, "I've been blessed to enjoy a career spanning over 5 decades, and unlike some people in television, I've remained relevant without tearing others down to stay in the spotlight." The air shifted so sharply one could almost hear it snap. The audience exchanged glances. Whoopi raised her eyebrows, Sarah clutched her cards, Sunny's lips parted just slightly, shock frozen in place. It should have been a warning, a graceful exit ramp, but Joy, ever determined to win even when outmatched, pushed on. She released a chuckle, the fake one viewers recognize instantly. "Oh, someone's spicy today. I just mean, music has changed so much. Do young people even know who you are anymore?" Whoopi attempted to step in, half laughing to diffuse the tension. "Come on now, Joy. Everyone knows Chaka Khan." But Chaka wasn't interested in rescue. She raised a hand, eyes locked on Joy like a queen silencing noise in her court. "Young people not only know who I am," she said, voice firm but controlled. "They sample my music, they honor my legacy, and in 5 minutes they show me more respect than you have in the 30 seconds we've been speaking." A subtle gasp rippled through the audience. "And let me ask you something in return," Chaka continued, leaning in just slightly. "When was the last time someone under 40 knew your name for anything other than being loud and wrong on television?" Silence. Pure, heavy silence. The studio lights suddenly felt harsher. A camera operator hesitated, unsure where to point the lens, at the queen delivering truth or the host swallowing it whole. Even the floor managers, usually calm, looked terrified of breathing too loudly. Joy's cheeks flushed a deep shade of red, somewhere between embarrassment and rage. She opened her mouth to respond, but words refused to gather. Her confidence had cracked. Her armor, sarcasm, was useless now. Chaka stayed composed, poised, regal. She didn't gloat. She didn't smirk. She simply sat in her earned power, reminding everyone who she was. A woman whose voice defined eras. A trailblazer who demanded respect and never apologized for it. A legend who didn't need validation from a daytime talk host. Seeing Joy speechless, a rarity, Whoopi cleared her throat and attempted to guide the interview back to smoother waters. "So, Chaka," she said warmly, "your influence continues to shape music today. You're celebrated by artists across generations. But the moment had already changed the narrative. The audience wasn't listening to the recovery attempt. Their eyes remained fixed on Chaka, the queen reclaiming her throne before millions. Joy finally tried to regain her footing, forcing a tight smile. "Well, that's just your perspective," she muttered. Chaka offered an elegant half-smile, the kind reserved for people who don't realize they've already lost the argument. "No, Joy, that's called history, and it speaks for itself." A few brave audience members applauded. Then more joined. Within seconds the entire room erupted, cheering, clapping, celebrating a moment of truth rarely allowed on live TV. Joy leaned back in her chair, trying to laugh it off, but everyone could see it. She had been dismantled, not with insults but with facts and self-respect. Her co-hosts avoided eye contact, pretending to shuffle notes or adjust jewelry. Even the producers behind the scenes watched with wide eyes, hands hovering over the cut to commercial button, but Chaka remained gracious. She wasn't there to humiliate anyone. She was there to defend her legacy, a legacy built on undeniable greatness. As they rolled to break, Whoopi leaned over, whispering something to Joy that viewers couldn't hear. But Chaka stood, giving the audience a nod of appreciation before the applause swallowed the scene entirely. And just like that, history was made. Because sometimes, when a music icon walks onto a stage where her respect isn't guaranteed, she doesn't shrink. She doesn't play along. She reminds the world exactly who she is: Chaka Khan, the queen, and queen's bow to no one. Joy Behar straightened her posture, attempting to reclaim her authority, her voice sharp and defensive. "Listen here," she snapped. "I've been in television longer than most people have been alive. I think I know how to conduct an interview." Her words hung in the air like a brittle shield, one that was already cracking. Chaka Khan merely leaned back in her chair, confidence wrapped around her like velvet. Her expression was calm, controlled, almost amused. She looked every bit a woman who had seen egos much larger than Joy's rise and fall without ever lifting a finger. "Oh, you think this is an interview?" Chaka replied, tilting her head slightly. "I thought this was you trying to make yourself feel important by diminishing my accomplishments." Few quiet oohs slipped from the audience, unable to help themselves. Chaka continued, her voice smooth but edged with steel. "See, that's the difference between you and me, Joy. I build people up with my art. You tear them down with your words." Joy blinked, rattled. For the first time in a long time, she was the one struggling for footing on her own show. "I wasn't trying to diminish anything," Joy insisted, stuttering through a forced chuckle. "I was just making conversation." "No," Chaka said plainly, "what you were doing was being disrespectful, and frankly, I'm tired of it." There was no anger in her tone, just truth, the kind of truth that carried decades of experience, the kind that didn't need to shout to be heard. "You opened this conversation by implying my career is basically over," Chaka continued. "Then you questioned whether young people know who I am, all while sitting there like you're some authority on music and culture." She let the silence land before adding, "News flash, Joy, you're not." A few audience members clapped before quickly realizing they were on live television and pulling their hands back. Too late. The sound was already there, undeniable proof of who the room was rooting for. The camera cut to the other hosts. Whoopi looked like she was watching a heist, bead collision she couldn't stop. Sarah Haynes clutched her note cards like scripture. Sunny Hostin stared forward, too stunned to blink. Alyssa Farah Griffin looked desperate for someone, anyone to take control. Joy tried to laugh again, but this time her voice wavered. The mask was slipping fast. "Well," she said quietly, "I certainly didn't mean any disrespect." Chaka lifted an eyebrow. "Oh, but you did mean it. That's exactly the point. I've been in this business long enough to recognize when someone is trying to play games with me." She leaned in, eyes locked on Joy's. No escape, no commercial break coming soon enough. "And I don't play games, honey," she said, her voice lowering into a warning. "I end them." The audience erupted. Gasps, whispers, stunned stillness. It felt like oxygen had been sucked out of the studio. This wasn't just a celebrity clapping back. This was a masterclass in dignity and dominance. Joy swallowed hard, her throat visibly tightening. "I think you're overreacting a bit here," she muttered, grasping at the only defense she had left. That was the wrong move. Chaka's eyebrows rose slowly, the cue that the final strike was coming. "Overreacting," she repeated. "Let me tell you what overreacting looks like, Joy." She sat forward, her presence growing larger than the stage itself. "Overreacting would be me walking off this set right now, telling the world exactly what kind of person you really are when these cameras aren't rolling." Joy stiffened, eyes wide. "Overreacting would be me using my platform to show real receipts, of how you treat guests who don't play along with your little on-air persona." A hush fell so deep that the hum of the studio lights became audible. "What I'm doing," Chaka continued, her voice dangerously calm, "is giving you a chance to apologize and walk away with at least some dignity intact." The words hit like thunder. Joy opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Her usual arsenal, sarcasm, confidence, comedy, was gone, vaporized by truth. "I don't think I need to apologize for doing my job." Joy finally managed, though her voice cracked halfway through. Chaka didn't hesitate. "Your job is to interview guests, not insult them." The audience clapped again, louder this time, applause that couldn't be contained. Cheers broke out. One woman in the front row even stood up, and Chaka wasn't finished. "But since you brought up jobs," she said, her tone turning razor sharp, "let's talk about that." Joy froze. Chaka continued, eyes narrowing with precision. "You host a talk show. A successful one, yes. But talk shows come and go. Hosts get swapped out. People get tired of loud opinions with nothing real behind them." Joy's breath caught in her throat. "But me?" Chaka tapped her chest lightly. "My voice doesn't get replaced. My music doesn't expire. My legacy doesn't depend on ratings or controversy." She paused long enough for the weight of the words to settle. "So when you sit there and act like you're above me," she shook her head, "that's not just disrespectful, it's delusional." Joy looked away. She couldn't meet Chaka's eyes anymore. The audience was fully on Chaka's side, leaning forward, captivated, stunned by a confrontation they never expected, but would never forget. This wasn't celebrity drama. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a legend defending her name, her art, her legacy, and she had done it with grace sharpened into a weapon. As the show cut abruptly to commercial, the last image viewers saw was Joy Behar sinking into her chair, and Chaka Khan sitting tall. "My job," Chaka said, enunciating every syllable with effortless authority, "has been making music that moves people's souls for more than 50 years." She allowed that statement to linger, an unspoken reminder of the generations she had influenced, the awards she had earned, the iconic status she never needed to brag about. "Your job," she continued, gesturing casually toward Joy with a graceful flick of her wrist, "seems to be sitting at this table, making people uncomfortable with your ignorance. I'd say one of us is definitely better at their job than the other." The audience reacted with a stunned murmur. They weren't sure if they should applaud or hold their breath. The moment was too sharp, too real, too electric to interrupt. The other hosts shifted nervously in their seats. They knew Joy had crossed a line, but they also knew no one could save her now. Whoopi looked frozen between second-hand embarrassment and fascination. Sarah kept swallowing hard like she was bracing for impact. Sunny stared straight ahead, lips pressed together, choosing silence over involvement. And Alyssa, eyes wide, looked like she was mentally jotting notes on what not to do in a live interview. Joy Behar, on the other hand, was unraveling by the second. Her hands fidgeted. Her face flushed a deep shade of frustration. The confidence she typically wielded so easily was slipping through her fingers like sand. "I've been nothing but professional here," Joy muttered, voice growing more defensive and less convincing with every word. Chaka laughed, a smooth, amused laugh that somehow cut deeper than shouting ever could. "Professional," she repeated, widening her eyes in mock surprise. "Joy, if this is your idea of professional, I would genuinely hate to see what you consider rude." She leaned slightly forward, still poised as royalty. "You've spent the last 5 minutes questioning my relevance, my impact, and essentially implying that my career belongs in a museum. Tell me, in what world is that professional?" Joy's lips trembled. Cameras zoomed in on her expression, a mixture of panic and pride desperately battling for control. The tension had grown so dense the studio lights seemed dimmer under its weight, and Chaka was not finished. Joy exhaled sharply, trying to reclaim the narrative. "Look, I think we're getting a little too heated here," she said, pasting on a brittle smile. "This is supposed to be a fun interview about your new project." Chaka tilted her head. Very slowly. It was the kind of movement a lioness makes when deciding whether or not to strike again. "Oh, I see," she said. "You spend 10 minutes trying to tear me down. But now that I'm defending myself, suddenly you want to change the subject to something fun and productive." The audience sat frozen, not one whisper, not one cough. Every eye stayed locked on the queen reclaiming her throne. Joy tried again, wavering. "I was never trying to tear you down. I think you're being overly sensitive." Instantly, the temperature of the room dropped. Whoopi's eyes bulged like she had just witnessed a car swerve off a cliff. Sarah audibly gasped, hands flying over her mouth. Sunny placed her hand to her forehead, unable to conceal her disbelief. Joy Behar had just called Chaka Khan, a woman who fought racism, sexism, ageism, and industry politics for 5 decades overly sensitive. A hush of disbelief washed across the audience like a cold wave. Chaka didn't blink. She didn't move. Her calm became more dangerous than any anger could ever be. Overly sensitive, she repeated quietly, letting the words echo. Joy, let me explain something to you. She rested her hands gracefully on the table, composure wrapped around unshakable dignity. When you've survived what I've survived in this industry, when you've had to fight for your seat at the table, no matter how many times someone tried to pull the chair away, when you've had to work twice as hard to get half the respect, you learn to recognize exactly when someone is trying to diminish you. Joy's eyes dropped to the table. She couldn't face the truth staring back at her. That is exactly what you've been doing since the moment I sat down here, Chaka continued. You weren't curious about my new project. You weren't interested in celebrating accomplishments. You were poking at my legacy, poking at my longevity, trying to find a crack that doesn't exist. Chaka's voice softened, not out of mercy, but out of power. Because she didn't need volume to be heard. So no, I'm not being overly sensitive. I'm being appropriately defensive of a career and a life that has earned more respect than you've shown today. Joy fumbled for a comeback, but every potential word died before reaching her lips. And the sad part is, Chaka added, you don't even realize how transparent you are. Joy finally looked up, eyes glistening with a desperation she couldn't hide. Chaka gave her one last gift, the truth. You don't tear people down because they are irrelevant, Joy, she said. You tear them down because you're threatened. A sharp exhale from the audience, audible, powerful. Joy recoiled like she'd been struck, not physically, but with something far more painful, accountability. Chaka leaned back again, purely composed, as if she had simply delivered the weather report. That's the difference between us, she finished. My legacy will keep rising long after I'm gone. Yours only exists as long as you keep talking. The applause didn't come at first, not because they disagreed, but because everyone was too stunned to remember how to react. Then slowly a single clap, then another. Then the studio erupted into thunderous approval. Chaka Khan sat tall, untouched by the chaos she had effortlessly commanded. The queen, the legend, the woman who refused to be minimized by anyone, especially not on live television. Joy Behar was stammering now, the shaky edge in her voice betraying her panic. She understood, far too late, that she had stepped into something she was not equipped to handle. I really don't think that's fair, she managed. Chaka leaned forward, elbows resting lightly on the table, her voice dropping into that low, commanding register that only the most seasoned legends can master. You want to talk about fair, Joy? She asked, her tone equal parts calm and lethal. Is it fair that you invited me here, supposedly to celebrate my newest work, but chose instead to question whether I'm still relevant? Is it fair that you talk to me like I'm some novice who doesn't know this business? Is it fair that the moment I defend myself, you label me overly sensitive? Joy scanned the faces of her co-hosts, desperate for backup, but not one of them was foolish enough to step into the blaze she had ignited. They sat still, choosing silence over becoming collateral damage. I just think maybe we got off on the wrong foot, Joy pleaded. Chaka shook her head slowly. No, Joy, we got off on the exact foot you chose. You decided to begin this conversation with disrespect. Now you're shocked that I'm not sitting here smiling while you diminish 50 years of my life's work. Every sentence from Chaka was precise. Sharp, surgical, a master at work. That's the problem with people like you, Joy, Chaka continued. You assume that because someone is a guest on your show, they must tolerate whatever attitude you dish out. The camera operators, professionals trained to remain invisible, could be heard shifting as they refocused their lenses. Every flicker of discomfort, every tension, filled breath was being broadcast to millions. Joy's foundation was cracking. Her voice lifted into that shrill octave she hit only when rattled. Now wait just a minute, she snapped. I don't have to sit here and be lectured by you. A heavy silence fell. Even the audience didn't dare cough. Chaka eased back in her seat, a slow, dangerous smile forming, the kind that tells everyone in the room, this is about to get worse. Oh, but you do, Joy, she said softly. Because you created this moment, you could have been respectful, you could have been professional, you could have done your job with grace, but instead, you tried to make yourself look big by making me look small. The smile disappeared. Chaka's eyes hardened, and the only flaw in that strategy, Joy, is that I don't do small. A dramatic beat passed. I do legendary. The audience gasped. Someone whispered, "Wow," loud enough for the microphone to pick up. Joy's throat tightened. Her words came out thin and strained. "I think you're completely mischaracterizing what happened here." Chaka held up her hand politely. "Let's review." She lifted one finger. "First, you suggested my career was practically ancient history. A second finger. Then, you questioned whether young people even know me. Third, when I responded respectfully, you called me feisty, like I was a misbehaving pet who needed training. Fourth, and when I continued defending my legacy, you told me I was overreacting and overly sensitive." She paused and looked directly into Joy's eyes. "Did I miss anything, or do you want to add more insults to the list?" Joy's lips trembled. She had nowhere left to hide. "I didn't mean those things the way you took them," she whispered. "Oh, but you did mean them exactly the way I took them," Chaka replied smoothly. "The real issue is that you're not used to people holding up a mirror. You're used to celebrities coming here, sitting politely, letting you take little jabs at them, and leaving without calling you out." She leaned closer, never breaking eye contact. "But I'm not most celebrities." Her voice deepened with unmistakable authority. "Joy, I am Chaka Khan, and I did not survive this industry by letting anyone, especially not a talk show host, disrespect me." Whoopi Goldberg finally tried to intervene, throwing her hands up slightly, her voice strained with tension. "Ladies, maybe we should all take a breath." Chaka softened her expression as she turned to Whoopi. "Whoopi, I have nothing but love and respect for you. You've earned that. But your colleague here decided to pick a fight she clearly cannot finish, and I'm not going to sweep it under the rug just to keep everyone comfortable." Joy, beaten but still swinging, tried another desperate angle. "I've been doing this show for years," she said, voice cracking, "and I've interviewed thousands of people, and how many of them told you the truth about how you made them feel?" Chaka fired back instantly. "How many left this table feeling respected, feeling heard, feeling valued for their accomplishments and not targeted for your entertainment?" Joy froze, no response, nothing to stand on, and that, Joy, Chaka continued, spreading her hands gracefully, "is why this conversation is happening. Right here, right now, in front of everyone." Her gaze softened, not out of sympathy, but clarity. "You needed this moment more than I did." Joy blinked rapidly, trying to maintain composure, but tears of humiliation were threatening to surface. The audience sat motionless, transfixed. This wasn't just drama. This was a reckoning. Chaka Khan took a breath and delivered the final words with unmistakable grace. "I didn't come here to embarrass you. I came here to talk about music, about passion, about artistry. You chose disrespect, I chose truth." She folded her hands elegantly. "And truth always wins."